talk about how amazing Margaret is.
That's right.
Oh, that's why my ears are burning.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Let's see. Anyone? Oh, well, Larry, huh? Yay.
Rich and I.
Rich.
Oh my God, Rich, you just like blew him away.
Well, you missed my disclaimer. I was basically unopposed because it was a write-in candidate.
Oh, he was? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not too many people. I mean, I didn't even know until just now that a write-in candidate actually has to file paperwork.
You know, I did not know that either. And
yeah, so that's why on the results, his name was on the website, but on the ballot, his name wasn't there.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you the optics, Rich. The optics actually, it looks more impressive to have
live,
such a lopsided victory than to run unopposed.
Yes, we're live, everyone.
You know what?
Okay.
You're absolutely right, Chappie. You're absolutely right.
We're alive.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. Buddy,
Oh,
inside.
buddy.
Call the meeting to order. Andy, can we have the roll call?
Auden, do you want to do the roll call?
Or,
Here.
sorry.
Okay. Mayor Klein,
Here.
Councilmember Sayak,
Here.
Vice Mayor Jones,
Present.
Mayor Abacogua,
Here.
Vice Mayor Fligor,
Here.
Mayor Constantine,
Present.
and then do I need to call the non-voting members or?
No, but you can just note who else is present. We have Joe, and I don't know how to pronounce Joe's last name. Royce?
Royce.
Thank you. He's the auditor for City of San Jose. We also have Kent Steffens, who is an ex officio. He was here. Did we lose him?
He was here, but he's gone.
Okay,
Mr.
well, maybe
Drop-off.
he'll be back. And Shantine is here, our legal counsel.
Okay,
All right, ready to go.
thank you very much. Let's next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Was there anything that need to be pulled or discussed? Financials and invoice? Is there a motion?
So
Move
moved.
Move to approve.
A
Or
second.
I'll second.
I have a Chappie.
All the joys of Zoom.
I have Chappie and then Mariko as a second.
Thank you. Auden, can we have a voice vote?
Yep. Mayor Constantine,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Fligor,
Yes.
Mayor Abacogua,
Hi.
Vice Mayor Jones,
Aye.
Councilmember Sayak,
Yes.
and then Mayor Klein.
Yes.
Was-
Sorry.
Yes.
Say, Larry's voice has changed.
Someone, of course, is at the front door. Good timing. And just for the record, I just wanted to note that we have no members of the public in the waiting room. So, okay. Moving on, next item is the audit report. Andy, or
Well, we have Joe here with us, and I'm just going to let Joe take it from here. Is that
Yeah, I
okay?
just have
Would you like me to share a screen or anything, Joe?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
If we want to bring it up, we can. I just have a few things. I was going to run through some of the details. So good afternoon. I'm Joe Royce. I'm the city auditor for the city of San Jose. And for those unfamiliar with my office, under the city charter, we're charged with conducting performance audits to determine whether city resources are being used in an economical and efficient manner, and whether city programs are meeting established objectives or desired results. And for a number of years, we've conducted performance audits for the Cities Association. We've reviewed expenditures and financial reports provided to you all, and we've assessed whether those reports are accurate and whether controls are in place to protect association assets. As I mentioned, we conduct performance audits, which are different from a financial audit, which the purpose of which is to express an opinion about whether the financial statements fairly represent the financial position of an organization and are prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP. So we have before you is our current expenditure review for fiscal years 2019, fiscal years ending June 30th, 2019 and 2020. We have a couple findings and I'll just briefly discuss. And so first, because of transactions not being recorded in the correct accounting period, some of the financial reports provided to you have not been accurate. We discussed this with Andy and recommended she work with the association's bookkeeper to more consistently record transactions in the correct accounting period, as well as establishing a process to inform the board when later adjustments, appropriate adjustments for correcting those entries materially change the financial reports previously provided. And so she agreed with each of the recommendations. Second, though we do note that the association has controls in place to protect the association's assets, primarily the bank account, basically, there is room for improvement, in particular in separating out assets associated with the Santa Clara Santa Cruz Roundtable. So it's our understanding the roundtable may be separating from the association, and better distinction between the assets of each will make that separation easier. Again, Andy agreed with that recommendation. With that, I want to thank Andy, as well as Adele Gruber, who provides bookkeeping service to the association for their time and insight during the process. And also like to thank Juan Barragan from my office who performed the work. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here today. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the report.
Thank
No,
you, Jim.
I just also just wanted to add real quickly, it's been very helpful because we did have some recording issues with the roundtable, and it was good to have Juan and Joe help us figure out how to better handle that. We were, the roundtable started in a calendar year, then had a 6-month addition going to a fiscal year. And there's just a data entry problem in the way we were using QuickBooks. And we recognized it, but couldn't quite figure out how to fix it. And Adele was able to fix it. And so Adele and I are also working on new ways to review the financial transactions and to give you, try to create a policy for you all to formally adopt.
So so Joe, and I don't know if this is to Joe or Andy, from an accounting period standpoint, as far as not being listed correctly or accounted correctly, were you talking on a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, or what was the kind of the time shift as far as that's concerned that we're trying to resolve with the new accountant or with the new?
What we were seeing was just kind of a lag. So revenues were being reported in a later period. And so what you are seeing might not reflect the full activity over a period. So we looked at, let's see, I'm looking at the report. So we looked at 9 financial reports, and 8 of them had some discrepancy where some activity was recorded late. And so it just wasn't captured in what you were receiving. And so it was correctly accounted for at some point, just not in the right period. So it was just, so the reports were accurately representing the activity of that period.
If you don't mind, I can explain to you really quickly what happened. We receive a bill after the fact. So say you're reviewing right now for the roundtable, September roundtable expenses. And when we received the bill wasn't entered as a September transaction, but when we paid it. And so we had to go back. And so it just screwed up our budgeting.
Okay, that makes sense. Are there any questions of Joe or Andy as far as this item is concerned?
I did add after his report in the packet so that you could see, I did add in the financials for the roundtable so that you can see that they can be pulled out, and the expenditures and the revenue for the roundtable, that we can account for them. I didn't want there to be any question that we could do that we've created classes so that we can see what we're spending for the roundtable versus the cities association. And so the records that you can see after the audit report, I think they have like a green tab on them if you're looking at them right now. Those are those, and then you can see it says roundtable in the columns. So we'll know how much money we've brought in, taken out, and how much if they leave, when they leave, we can write them a check.
Okay. Any questions of Joe or Andy?
Yes, one quick question. So Joe, in your report, you're recommending that we create separate checking accounts for the different entities that we're supporting?
Well, once the roundtable becomes a separate entity, it will need to have its own bank account. That was my understanding, and Andy can chime in, that all the money is in one bank account at this point.
Right.
And so separating that out will be helpful, especially if it becomes a different entity.
Well, I
So,
mean, once it
you have
becomes,
anything to say?
that'd be very clean and straightforward, but in the interim, should we have a separate checking account for both the roundtable and the planning collaborative? Or continue to keep them all in one checking account? Just from my,
Ideally, but I think Andy can answer this a little better.
so they legally cannot open their own checking account because they are not a legal entity. So we have to open the bank account for them, and we can do that. And I actually went and started the process to open a second bank account for them. But it will also be doubling our work and increasing our expenses. We will then have to reconcile another account. We cannot, then it would have to be, we would have to have another QuickBooks account because you can't have separate, we might be able to still manage the fund, but and then we would have to do a separate bill pay function. It just muddies it makes twice as much work. And so the way we can manage the money with the account status, we know exactly how much money they have by running these reports. And so we can just write them or transfer when they move elsewhere. So that is my preference, unless we're going to charge them for the expenses that we're incurring on their behalf. Because right now, also in the report, it discusses the charges that we are incurring on their behalf that they are not paying for.
and thank you for that clarification. I realize that it's not desirable. I just didn't know whether it was required or necessary.
Oh,
Ideally, it would be nice to have a separate bank account, but as Andy said, there's some hurdles to get over from an accounting standpoint within the current structure.
And for the planning collaborative, Andy, so I understand the roundtable and how that would work, but for the planning collaborative, what are the payments that are being made on behalf of the planning collaborative? Like, what are the different charges?
we just are paying a consultant.
So it's just that consultant, so it's easy to
Right.
identify. Okay.
And when we created the classes, when the bookkeeper created the classes, we just didn't know what was going to happen with the planning collaborative. And so I thought it was good just that we separated that out so we could see it. It's on paper. It shows so that when we bill, we can see we're billing for the roundtable, we're receiving funds for the roundtable and we're expending it. So, and that will be, I've just invoiced all the cities and the county for the planning collaborative as well.
And this is just a checking account?
Yes, we have a checking account. It's a business account. And then we also have an investment account with Life, which is funny because to be with Life, you have to be a government agency. And so
no, that's right. But for the LAIF account, is it only Cities Association funds, or do we have them commingled as well?
Well, we just have one account. But,
right. Right. So
yes.
one account, but is it solely Cities Association funds going into that account, or are we also investing some of the planning collaborative funds?
Our accounts are when I transfer, and I haven't actually transferred for quite a while. But when we transfer, I mean, the funds are commingled. So yes, we would be investing if we do. Just your cities usually just have one account too. I mean, some like San Jose probably has multiple accounts, but when we set this up, I did talk to several city managers and asked them what the best way to do this. And they said, we have different funds and they're on paper. And so this is not unusual. And that was, so and then when we had a calendar year budget and I asked them about that, they said, we do contracts all the time that are just calendar year. So, the reporting function was our data entry issue. I can throw up a table if you guys want to see it. Actually, is it in the report that shows the different funds?
No, I don't think we
Yeah, and Andy, the only reason I asked, I know it's a little bit more tricky,
Mhm.
tracking LAIF type funds, investment saving type funds versus just the checking account. So that's why I asked. And as long as we have a system where we can really identify each of the different funds, I am
Right.
totally fine keeping it together.
So, and I think what also that I would say the only other issue that I see is after I have received some inquiries from some of our cities that are not members of the roundtable who are concerned that the non-members are basically subsidizing the members of the roundtable. So I think that's more of a concern as well. Uh-oh.
Larry, you're muted.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. We lost Kent again. I was texting with him in the background. He's up, he's remote today, so he's having internet issues.
Okay.
Anyway, any other questions for Joe or Andy?
There, I have I had my blue hand up. I don't know if that's what we should
Go
do, or
ahead.
if we just chime in.
Go ahead, Rich.
Okay. Regarding the roundtable, did they respond to the rather pointed letter that we sent them regarding their, I don't know how to quite put it, but they're remaining with the county or the city association rather?
Go ahead,
I'm
Andy.
happy to answer this to a degree. Hi, Rich.
Hey.
They did and they didn't. So I attended the last roundtable meeting, the entire roundtable, was present for it. And Marilyn Bernald, the chair, had asked that I give a presentation, which of course was not really on the agenda. So I explained that we didn't have a presentation to give, and instead we were hoping that we would have, as we had asked, a decision from them, or at least a plan from them by December or January. They have not really come together to provide such a plan. They have a draft plan that was discussed very briefly at the last roundtable meeting, and the draft plan still suggested that they remain with the cities association. So of course, based on our, as you said, pointed letter, that was not something that we were going to endeavor to really discuss until, again, we have that January meeting where they propose a plan that discusses their independence, however they want to achieve it, whether that's through finding another fiscal agent or establishing themselves as an independent organization that can be a legal entity and have their own insurance and bank account, et cetera. So at this point, we did get their draft plan, but there are a number of other moving parts that are still in motion. One of which is that they're discussing with joint venture Silicon Valley, potential fiscal agency, and that is still in the process. So ideally, when we get to December, I know we don't have a meeting scheduled for December right now, but January, then they will have some better idea of whether that's a viable option. Otherwise, as we've requested, they will hopefully come forward with some other plan for their independence, but we've yet to see really how they intend to do so. One of the things that they expressed was the financial difficulties of them seeking other fiscal agents. Of course, though, with the results of this audit and understanding that there may be some, well, at least there's a recommendation from the audit to charge the roundtable for expenses that the cities association is incurring on their behalf, that could theoretically change their calculation of what's financially possible or not, because currently we're doing this mostly, for free, more or less, not entirely, but if we do shift the financials a little bit with that, then they could come up with a different calculation. But we've really yet to see, and I advise that they take the time that they need and wait until January. We allotted them that period of time so they really could dig in and see if there are any other options out there. And I also clarified, because there were some folks on the roundtable suggesting that we had said by January, you're done, we're separating from you, full stop, that's not really what we've said. What we've asked for is their plan by January. And so that was clarified. I think that was hopefully received and understood. But There was some rumblings, we haven't seen anything formally requested from the roundtable yet, that they wanted to have their ad hoc committee come and speak with the cities association. We have not received a formal request. There's also concerns that I have about some Brown Act issues that could be raised if an entire ad hoc committee comes to the Board of Cities Association and potentially forms a quorum of one of the rebel boards, whether that's subcommittee or the full committee itself. So that's also potentially in the works, but query how necessary that is, since they have at least until January to come up with another plan, and then we can have the discussion at that time, as we've said. So it's a really long answer, but I did want to fill you guys in on what happened. Happy to answer other questions, but.
Well, I appreciate that. Have we set, have we decided that we will no longer incur their fees and that we will start charging them for fees after a certain time?
No, that has not been yet decided. I think the audit is really the first time that we're thinking about that as a potential option. And I don't, Andy might know more about it, but I'm not sure that that's moving that direction yet.
Just jump in because I didn't bring that up in my earlier comments, and legal counsel did bring that up. And so that was something we did note in our report, was just the amount of time that's being spent by the executive director and the bookkeeper, primarily in some of this administrative work. And if after separation, this work continues, then likely should be seeking some reimbursement. So we didn't have a hard recommendation on that, so I didn't bring it up, but it is something to be considered. That is a consideration if the admin work continues.
And this might be for Joe or Andy. Can we make the decision that once we give them a grace period, I think January, February, to make their decision, that after that period of time, that any fees that they incur would be deducted from their monies that they hold with us? Can we do something like that?
I think you can do that. I think that we can, tell them if the board chooses to decide that. I don't see why we can't.
I think that would be a good step, especially since it's definitely our intention to separate ourselves from the roundtable, that we give them a firm time where we're going to say that until you get your own bank account, and that because we're going to keep your account, and we're incurring costs because it's our intention to separate from you, that we should not have to bear those costs that they are generating. Thank you, Larry.
Past a certain point, I agree, Rich. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Margaret?
I was thinking along the same lines, and that depending on how long we continue with them, that we should start to implement some kind of cost recovery from them. So I don't know how we plan to move forward, but like if it's January, February, and at that point we're going to separate, I think that's fine. We can go another couple months, but if this is going to be like 6 months or longer, then I think we should start charging. So I don't know, if you want, when we will have that conversation, but I would like to make it soon, just in light of the audit and in response to the audit. And also just, it might also help them, the roundtable, come to a decision sooner if they knew what the costs are.
I was under the impression, I know we had a lengthy conversation about this, and that's how we came up with the soft deadline of January. So I think that would be the appropriate time to have this discussion based on whatever we get back from them, which will also drive our decision-making process. So my recommendation would be to wait for our soft deadline and see what we get back from them. Hopefully they have a detailed, well thought out plan of separating from us. Well, that's my hope, and I'll just leave it at that. Thank you, Nisa. Nisa?
So I agree with Chaffee. My preference is to wait and see what they come back with in January before making any other decisions. And I'm curious, Andy, and it may have been in the packet and I missed it. Do we have an estimate of what those expenses look like that we have not been charging them?
Well, basically, we just, a lot of it is my salary because it was taking about a third of my time. And so
So on a
we just-
monthly basis, what is that? Because if we're going to do a cost recovery, then we're going to have to.
Right.
That
And
is.
then
That's
also,
monthly.
they're not paying for the bank account. They're not paying for like software, accounting. They're not paying for the bookkeeper. And so that was where the auditors, I think we had it at 30 to 35,000 and they said it was more accurately 35 to 40.
So we just used a pretty rough estimate of a couple of the different cost categories based on that third. It's a pretty rough estimate. Obviously, Andy's not, tracking her time on an hourly basis. But if we use that third, it's about 35,000 a year. So that would be, roughly 3,000 a month.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If that sounds about right, Andy.
Yes. And they're not paying for insurance, workman's comp, there's costs to running an organization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it would be good to get that if we move in that direction. Because
And we
don't put too much salt in the wound.
Yeah.
So if there's a way to,
We also need to add in because there's been a significant amount of the time that for Shantine, I mean, the roundtable is paying Shantine for her attending meetings as their counsel, but she's also having to spend a lot of time on our behalf on this. So it probably will go up, the cost.
Okay.
So
Anything else?
I think Mariko has a question.
Mariko just had, sorry, Mariko.
So, and I don't know who the appropriate person, what is the process? So they come back in January, do they come back to the board, the full board? Do they come back to the committee? Like who makes the ultimate decision on if there is a separation and what those terms and conditions would be?
You're saying executive board or the board?
Exactly.
I would assume that the board would have to make final decisions, correct?
Yeah, from my perspective, it would have to be the board because for a number of reasons. One is the way that the MOU and the bylaws are written talks about the full board. So I think that that's probably the safest bet. Also, just in terms of making sure that there's buy-in, I think it's also a safest bet for that. But I think largely it has to do with how our current terms are constructed, that it should go to the full board.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Anything else? Andy or Joe, is there any motion that really needs to be made at this point, or this corrective action is already being undertaken and, what?
I think it's just accept the report.
Okay.
I don't know if Andy agrees.
Yes, that's fine. And Larry, I just have a quick question for you. We have an attendee. I was wondering if it might be Kent.
Go ahead and unmute.
Okay.
707. Yeah, I think that is.
Okay. I'll just in case. I just want to make sure that Kent doesn't have anything that he wants to. Kent, do you have any comments on it? Is that you, Kent?
It is me. I had to connect my phone because I'm having internet problems, but I don't have any comments to add, but I am here on the phone.
Okay, great. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that you didn't have anything to add on this topic. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That's it. I think we just, do we need to have in order to accept it, do we need to take a roll? Or not? No? Okay.
I don't think so.
Shantine is saying no.
No.
Okay. Joe, thank you so much.
Nice to meet you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Joe.
Okay, next up is the executive director report.
Okay, we're going to start with the easy stuff. The general membership meeting. we had scheduled that for December 3rd, which is a Thursday night, but it's the first Thursday of the month. There is a conflict, and VTA is having their meeting that night. And so I didn't know, I did a query with all of the cities, and there is nothing scheduled for Thursday, December 10th.
Okay.
And so I didn't know if you were okay with changing it. And also the Fridays appeared to be available, Friday the 4th and Friday the 11th.
So besides VT on the 3rd, there are also certain councils that are swearing in people. Is that right?
So yes, so we do know that on the 3rd, there's also a few councils that are certifying their elections. Yes.
Okay. Something to keep in mind 2 years from now when we're picking that,
Yes.
picking those dates. Anyway.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Sure, go ahead, Ray.
Do we know when the RVO is going to be certifying the election? Because we don't, in Morgan Hill, we don't swear until after the Board of Registrar
think
has
it's
actually certified the election. And it's usually the first week in December.
They
They
say
have
30
until the
days.
3rd.
30 days, isn't it, Margaret?
December 3rd is the day that they have. That's the deadline.
Yes.
It has to be after that the cities certify.
Yeah, so we wouldn't be swearing in until the previous week because we have our meetings on Wednesdays,
So,
So
yeah,
just for timing.
right. In a lot of cities postpone until January, or some cities postpone until January, just in case there's recounts or anything of that nature that they're supposed to certify. But if there was a problem, they would probably leave something off if there were legal issues or legal battles or whatever. So anyway, so go ahead, Andy.
So I just wanted to know what your pleasure was. And also we can talk about the time, like how long do you want to do it, from 6 to 7 or 5:30 to 6:30? But would it be okay to move this to either the Friday, December 4th, or to Thursday, December 10th, which would be our normal meeting day?
So right now I have actually a meeting scheduled, an outreach meeting that becomes a council meeting, a council study session on the 10th. I would actually prefer the 10th, but that's already been notified to the public. So it does the 4th work for people, which would normally have been our CAS, which would have been the Cities Association Executive Board meeting for December, which I guess could go right into that.
Well, in the last couple of years, we haven't had an executive board meeting in December because of the general membership meeting.
Right. I think we've called a special one once or twice just to close up year-end issues or whatever they might be. And I think we talked about this before. The 11th was a holiday, or was Hanukkah. So that was an ongoing question and issue. So I'd be willing to move it to the 4th, the evening of the 4th. And just to let everybody know, this is, we talked a little bit last meeting about, what could be done here. We've kind of decided that it'll just be a relatively quick baton passing and social gathering, and whoever wants to stick around and talk is there, and whoever we're going to award. And this is one of the things that we do need to discuss at some point, but it's honoring our champion for the year, as well as kind of passing the baton from the president to the vice president. And so,
and in the past, on a big year where a lot of people are terming out, folks have been given certificates. 2 years ago, when people termed out, we recognized people who had served on the board, and we didn't give them anything. I think Rod said a few things about them. Rod or Manny did. Auden and I will be combing the list to see who's been on the executive board and the board and who's terming out. And I know that Manny would like to join us as well. So okay. So do we have a date that you like?
So does the
So
4th?
on the 4th, Larry,
Yeah.
SVCE has its holiday social from 3 to 4:30.
Oh,
So just earlier in the day. So if the 4th works, later in the day.
okay. And we were thinking previously like 5:30 to 6:30, a quick, max. And if it goes a little bit longer, it's fine. But I think that conceivably works as far as a meeting, if that meets everybody else's schedules.
Is that a yes?
I think,
Okay.
yes. We won't make it an official motion. It would just,
No, it's okay.
there's no,
And what, so you guys are thinking 5:30 to 6:30?
I was thinking relatively early.
Okay, I'm just double, okay.
It's already so dark at that time, that time of day nowadays. And people will be ready for the year to be over to some degree.
Okay. All right. So December 4th, 5:30 to 6:30 is what we're looking at. A little happy hour-ish kind of thing, I guess, right? Okay. So then the next thing is, for the past number of years, we've been honoring someone as the city's champion. And I think that Larry has a recommendation.
So, and we've normally done this as kind of an outgoing, well, it's varied from year to year, but usually it's an outgoing legislator. This year being the year it's been, I am, proposing that we award this to Cindy Chavez, if possible, mainly because, and this was in conjunction with what's been happening under COVID, but that relationship between the county and the cities, as far as making sure that we're trying to be represented. And I know that not all of you are invited to the weekend meetings with Cindy and Joe, but it actually has been very useful. Between
Dog agrees.
Thank you.
Larry, just roll with it.
Okay.
At this point, we're used to dogs, kids,
Yeah.
everything. So
We're-
And the thing is, if every time he barks, you pay him attention, he's going to keep barking.
No, I was sending him inside and my wife was coming in. Anyway, but I think from a county-wide standpoint, I think the cities in general have been getting a lot more recognition and I think there's been a lot more communication. I think a lot of it has to do with Cindy making a big effort as far as that's concerned. So I do think, awarding her that award, and, we've some of the outgoing legislators have already previously received that award, or I would have actually added them to that list. So, I think it makes sense. We talked about Senator Bell or Hill, and I think that, they've already received it in past years. And I think they're already kind of, once they're heading on vacation at the beginning of December. So it wouldn't have been feasible anyway to bring them back in. So what do people think about that proposal? Or if they have another suggestion, I'd be happy to hear. Comment?
hey, Andy, I don't have the reaction feature on my.
Yeah, I know, it doesn't seem to.
Because I would give a thumbs
It's
up.
up to me.
So I am 100% supportive, Larry.
Yeah.
I'm curious what we do, going back to what Andy said, for outgoing council members who have termed out. So like Liz Niz, this is it for her.
Yeah.
And she was a champion. And so do we recognize them? I mean, so this would be a separate recognition. But Liz came to mind for me just because of all she did with pushing the county for the testing. She has done the rounds. This is her second time. She's really done. How do we recognize someone like Liz Niz?
That's true.
You could also give it to Liz.
Well, I don't know. I think Cindy's great. But as I was listening, I'm also thinking, should we do something for Liz?
So in the past,
Have we given it to Liz when she turned out from county? Do you know? Do we have?
I don't think the award's been around that long. But I know who I can ask.
It would only have been 8 years ago, right?
That's possible.
I don't,
They have, because that would have been 2012. I don't know. Rania, maybe she would know.
I'm sending her a message right now to see.
I'll actually, Andy, ask her to just go ahead and hop on if I know.
Oh, okay.
She said she was available.
And I don't want to, so I agree with Cindy. I don't want you to think I'm saying no to Cindy.
No.
I'm just saying, I think Liz deserves some recognition as well.
So in the past, so I recall in 2016 when Rania was still the executive director, all the outgoing people, but it was in person, received a certificate. We could do something else. I mean, we could do something smaller for people. I mean, there's a lot of people that are terming out that have done a lot of service for our cities. Do
you have a comment? Or
I'm seeing if Ronnie can jump on, but I haven't heard back from her yet.
okay. Rich, did you still have a comment or no?
I do.
Okay, go ahead. Go
I'm
for it.
unmuted. I agree with Nisa that Liz deserves recognition, and I agree with what Annie just said. I think maybe we should also think about Liz for the reward. I mean, I think back to I agree with Nisa. I completely agree that Cindy is most deserving of this award, but Liz's, and I can't remember, was it you and Liz, Larry, that pushed forth the testing? I think that was a push to get Cindy to actually start having those Saturday meetings that we're still having.
Right. And and Liz has been talking to Joe for a long time behind the scenes. So
Exactly. So, as it would be tough. I mean, can we do two? Can we do two people for that award? I mean, but definitely, I agree with Nisa that the push that Liz put forth for testing, and I thought was really a catalyst to move Cindy in that direction. Not that she wouldn't have. Cindy's always been very proactive when it comes to things that make sense. She's never been one to kind of wait and see. She says, "Okay, that makes sense. Let's do it." So she's deserving of the award as well. But I think it's something that we need to think about with Liz as well, because she did push forth a lot of the initiatives that we've seen happen are happening now. So That's my 2 cents.
So, no, I agree. And I hadn't thought about, because normally we do kind of above council member level to a certain degree. But you're absolutely right. And Nisa, I like that concept. There's nothing that says we can't give it to two. And we could conceivably be giving it to Cindy a few years from now, whenever she terms out. But I do think that this year has been a very unique sort of year, to say the least. And I would have no problem giving it to both of them, giving separate awards to both of them, because I do think that, Liz especially has led the effort, getting testing in the East County and coming, or getting tested in East Bay, and then coming and telling, the county supervisors, well, this is how they're doing it there. Why can't we do this? And going through her background, her medical background has made a very big difference under COVID. And she has been a champion for our cities, as well as, I do think that from both sides, it's actually been very positive. It's been it's been difficult for all of us, but I do think that both of them have made a difference. So are people fine with having two this year?
I am.
Good.
Okay, so I'm ordering 2 awards, and so she's going to find out about it, because we have to take this to the board next week.
That's fine.
Fine.
It's not like
It had to be a surprise.
Okay. I just thought it might be more fun if it was.
Well, it'll be a surprise when she finds out about it in board meeting.
Okay. All right.
I think that's fine. And it's just the recognition of her hard work. And I think, but in both of them, I do think it's for the city of Sunnyvale, we do a mayor's award every year. Normally it's either an individual or a group. And this year I ended up doing something similar. I gave an individual award and a group award, because it is that sort of year that it's like, it's taken a lot of effort from a lot of different people. And so I do think
Well,
that,
Well, maybe this will start something new that we recognize somebody from a city level as well, besides somebody else. So, okay. All righty. That sounds great. Now, the next piece of this puzzle is that previously when we were talking about comedians and cupcakes, Auden and I have been throwing around some ideas about, are we going to charge for this? Do you want us to send dinner to everyone or something else?
so at least how I see it, dinner's too much and trying to deal with 60 different people or couples or whatever. I think, cupcakes and conceivably something from Sunnyvale. So it is kind of Sunnyvale's outgoing year, and we do have Olson's cherries or apricots.
Supporting your local business, Larry.
That's right. Exactly. I think that the biggest issue is going to be distribution. But that being said, I do think that we can get something, whether or not it's me driving around, or splitting it between a few people, from a county standpoint. We won't have that many people to visit, and it's just dropping off a box of, I would say, cupcakes or something similar, and maybe the Olson's cherries that Sunnyvale is known for. Any people have comments? No
I think
comments?
that's fine, and it's fun.
Yeah. I think it'll be more relaxed, and so people can have wine with their cupcakes if they want, or whatever we want from that.
So Auden and I will work with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been looking for local businesses, Black-owned businesses, whatever we can do, we'll find something. We'll work with Kent's staff too.
Okay.
And
That's
see if we can come up with something. Okay. Excellent. Okay. All right. Finish that one.
Yay.
Okay. Ready for the next item?
Yep.
The next item is I received a call and a request from Canyon Snow and Leslie Gardino. They have been doing, they work with a lot of tech companies and a lot of businesses, representing them in government affairs and public affairs. And they've been having politics and pizza happy hours, and where they invite an elected official. I participated one where Cindy Chavez was the guest. Another time it was Mayor Liccardo. They're having one next week where they're going to have a firm in DC talking about the election. But they would like to start in the new COVID world. They would like to partner with us and have a mayor's forum where every month they would ask a different mayor, and they would have, a Zoom lunchtime call, and probably invite your city manager as well. Or if there's something going on, like a key staff person could attend with you as well. Really, there is no cost to us, but working with us will help ensure that we can have participation. I thought it was a nice idea to be able to work and to have our cities and our staff and you all get to know some of our local businesses and help strengthen those relationships. So that is the request. They're really, I don't think.
From a co-sponsorship standpoint, it's no money, it's just putting our name in.
Putting our name in, and I help make the contact with the city and getting their participation.
I think it has value. Does anyone else have comments? Questions?
Margaret does.
Oh, thank you, Margaret. Sorry.
I think it's a good idea. My concern is that, there are other consulting groups out there, and what if they all, wanted to do the same? Like, I just want to be equitable in how we treat these these private firms, frankly. It's different if it was like, SVLG or some kind of organization, but I just have concerns if it's a you know, a company, a private company trying to do
That's
this.
fair.
You know, like Jim Caneen's, you know, California Strategies, what if they wanted to do it? And do we end up doing all of them? Or should we just, you know, say maybe stay neutral? That's my concern.
At least from my take, at least, you know, getting, if we had a whole bunch, then it would be different right now. So I do agree that, you know, I think an SVLG did have something of this nature at one point, which I attended last year or the year before. So I do think that it does have value. It's just continuing networking, and from a sponsorship standpoint, if we're co-hosting or they're doing the majority of the work, if it's only Andy dealing with a certain portion of the connections and networking, then I don't think it's that bad. But it would be, I don't think we have a policy against it. And, you know, conceivably at some point it's, you know, I think the feedback might be, okay, we do a 6-month trial, or it's a 2021 effort or something of that nature, and then see how it works out. And if it's not working out, then Andy could come back to, or if we have too many requests, it's like, okay, we can only sponsor X many. But right now, Andy, did they have any idea as far as how many they were wanting to do? You know, you said, oh, they're doing one every week or once a month, or what's their plan?
I think it's once a month.
Okay.
Per the letter in the packet. And I'm going to pull up the packet right now and look at it, but I think it's once a month.
Okay.
And I think they're interested in starting.
Yeah.
And I know that you guys are already pondering this. I think right now, since there is no policy, it's not a big concern. I do take your point though, Margaret, especially if for any reason they were trying to bid for something, or they were being competitive in a way for some kind of contract, I would be concerned. So I think since we don't have that right now, I'm not terribly concerned. I do think though it is something to think for the future for potentially adopting a policy. If we want, you know, to do the trial period and see how it goes, but it's probably a good idea to have a policy anyway regarding potential conflicts, or essentially if there's going to be any competition with any kind of contracts or anything that we're handling, that we don't then entertain, obviously, gifts. You know, the federal government, we call them gifts. They're gifts from outside vendors if we are concerned about some overlap, but we can certainly adopt a policy.
Margaret?
I guess that was my question, or that was my concern, because they have sponsored our dinner in the past. And, you know, is that going to be seen like as a quid pro quo? If they've been sponsors, they probably will sponsor, and then we're doing this for them. And then, you know, I mean, as a government agency, right, we try to be equitable and do the bidding thing. And that's what I guess I would be more comfortable with, and rather than that, well, first come, first serve, and, you know, they called us, so we're going to do this. I'd rather open it up and, you know, to give everyone a fair shot, I guess, is what I feel more comfortable with. So I probably would not support this.
Those are excellent points. So just so I have clarity, so what are we, on the agenda it says consider, so what are we?
Andy, I know
That's my question too, Jack. Like,
go ahead.
what are they asking us to do? I feel like we may be raising concerns that go way above a simple ask.
They just want to have a Zoom lunchtime call where the mayor is invited to come and talk about what's happening in their city or what issues they're facing.
But how is that the Cities Association? The Cities Association doesn't only have mayors.
No, but that was just we don't always have mayors, but it could be just whoever. I mean, we could tell them that it would be our board member instead of the mayors. That was just the name they gave it. They gave it the Mayor's Forum. So this was just an ask to try to build relationships for their businesses to learn more about what is happening in cities. And it was a connection to try to build relationships.
Well, one thing that could be done could quickly adopt a policy and have it be, I mean, model it sort of after general public gift laws. So, if they're incidental gifts like food, things of that nature, then can say that maybe that's something that's acceptable because it's under a certain dollar amount for a certain period of time, a monthly, contribution that everyone is. I think there's pizza involved or something, or whatever it is. So that's a possibility, and then we can have a clause that talks about, obviously, conflicts of interest, and that we won't let that interfere. So that's one way to do it. There's a number of ways that we can try to control for issues, but I do think one of them that I generally have worked on in the past are those incidental gifts, where if they're under a certain threshold per person, then it's generally not a concern. If it then starts to become, $100, whatever the threshold we set, then there's a greater issue there. But I do think that's one way we can model it after at least what is I've seen in the state and the Fed, and we can have it here, Cities Association.
Hey,
What's
Shantae,
the
it sounds like you're
potential
underwater.
gift? But what's the potential? Are they giving us a food coupon? Like,
They're not giving the association anything. They're giving the speaker lunch and all the attendees.
Maybe, yeah.
And all the attendees that are there.
which we all do all that. Okay,
So it's basically it's nothing from us. We're kind of
right.
helping
I'm
them.
trying to follow.
So let me go through some of the other questions that people had. First up, Rich.
Thank you, Larry. I always tend to err on the side of caution. When in my former life, we had a consultant that came and spoke before the fire department. And one of the axioms that he always said was, if it's predictable, then it's preventable. And the fact that we're having these discussions that something may come up where it might be a conflict of interest, I think it'd be best that we make sure that we separate ourselves from any chance of that happening. And if there's a slight chance that this could come up, I think we should just not do it, really, to be perfectly honest with you. And I agree with Margaret. There's just so many things that could come up later on, even though right now it seems very innocuous, that it just to me doesn't seem like it's worth the effort. That's
Okay.
my 2 cents. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you. Marika.
Basically the same thing. I mean, perhaps we could just simplify it even more where they do this on their own and we would attend. But it doesn't have to be a cities association brand. I guess I'm just trying to figure out why we have to put our name to it. They tend to invite us to these things anyway as individuals. So.
Okay. Thank you. Chappie.
Oh, I just wanted to just ask a fundamental question, because we kind of jumped to the efficacy of partnering with or co-sponsoring with Canyon Snow. Is this even an event that we even would want to do to begin with, regardless of who we partner with? So I was just wondering, kind of putting the cart before the horse in terms of how we're approaching this. I mean, is this something that we perceive there would be a lot of value and that our members would get value from and that we'd want to participate in? So that's just the question I'm asking.
Understood. Okay. Let's see. Nisa?
I was actually hoping to get an answer to that question.
Oh,
I think Margaret.
It wasn't a rhetorical question. It was an actual question.
I thought it was rhetorical. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Okay. So, and from that standpoint, conceivably, yes, if all we're doing, if we're not really helping pick, if we're doing such a small lift, is there benefit from that connection? I'm not really sure. They could conceivably reach out to each of the cities in turn and do this on their own to some degree. I'm not really sure why they came to Andy specifically, but you're absolutely right.
Oh, come on, I'm nicer. No.
You have all the
just
real
kidding.
You have all the real numbers as opposed to what city staff will give them. No, I don't know. I do think that creating more of these relationships just helps the organization. That being said, you're right. There didn't seem to be a lot of there didn't seem to be a lot of ask here. And it was more, it's like, well, help us figure out who might be interested more than anything else, like how I saw it, but that was just me. Margaret?
I recognize that in the past we had some different, that they had donated money for events and things like that. I've been pretty upfront with them that we're not taking anything like that. But that wasn't the ask. I thought it was a pretty soft ask. So that is the reason why I brought it to you. And I can understand you've all brought up some very, very valid points. So if you would just like to decline, that's fine. And I can tell them to reach out to you individually.
Okay. Thank you. Margaret?
Yeah, well, but you said it. I think I don't see why they can't do it themselves. And if it's like your time, Andy, that they're asking for, then that is a consideration for me. And I can see it as a relationship, trying to build a relationship that leads to sponsorship of our annual event and when we go back to doing it. But I guess, yeah, my concern was if we, favor one company, are we shutting out our opportunity to work with others too? So I just want to be equitable with this. And I just don't think there's a whole lot of benefit for us to be doing this at this time.
Okay. Thank you. I think it's been the overwhelming feel here is that just, respond back to them, Andy, that thank you, but no thanks, and reach out to specific cities, specific mayors on their own. I think that makes sense.
Perfect. Will do.
Thank you. Next.
Okay, the next one is consideration of adoption of HR policies for the Cities Association. And in discussion with Mariko and also with Shantine, we recognize that we don't have a code of conduct, or it also, if there was a code of conduct, it was hidden back in the recesses of old files from 30 years ago. And so we thought it was a good idea to bring forward a code of conduct for the board. And also, since now you have several employees, that it's important that we make sure that we are operating in a fair and just kind of way, and making sure that we expect the best from our board and from our employees. And so I'm going to let Shantine take it over, or Mariko, I think, might want to say something.
Yes.
Yeah, I basically asked Shantine to look into this for us. As you all know, we sent a pretty pointed letter to Roundtable. And one of the red flags for me as an organization is if we knowingly know one of our employees is working in unfavorable circumstances, we need to do something about it, and we don't have any policies.
That makes sense.
Right.
Shantine?
Oh, beautifully said. Yeah, I just would add that, the goal is reciprocity, of course, so that members are fair to staff, staff's fair to members. We've included in the definition of members, and we've expanded it quite a bit to also include the roundtable and the planning collaborative, as well as any subcommittees that might be developed hereafter, any ad hoc committees. And it's mostly just about, very standard things: anti-harassment policy, anti-retaliation, anti-hostile work environment. And there's a conflict of interest section in there as well that talks about a soft disclosure. Once we transition to a JPA, there might be requirements for more mandatory disclosures in certain ways, but at this point, it's just asking that people are upfront about if their representation of the cities association, if they're otherwise biased in some way. But the primary goal here is to ensure the safety and welfare of all of you, as well as the staff, and to make sure that that is understood by any other parties that are subsumed under either our umbrella as a member or as a member of an organization from whom we act as a fiscal agent. And ideally, what that will do is shield the cities association from potential liability that might not be coming from the cities association, but might be coming from other organizations that you all are have oversight, but are not obviously sitting there every day managing, having your eye on. And so certainly open to comments from it. Is not set in stone. It's policies that have been that I've used in the past, but also that I've adapted from other governmental bodies. So they reflect the California state, obviously, and federal law as well. But there's, we have a purpose statement. That's something that might be you want to massage and add additional things to. That's of course something we can do. But also, if there are other policies that you'd like me to include, we can do so. I set out to address the things that I thought were most relevant and also very time sensitive to ensure that we had those policies in place, but it's certainly not all inclusive. So very open to that discussion and to make additional amendments, provided that you feel that there is some that you want to include.
Thank you. And Shantine, this would have to be approved by the board overall, correct? Yeah.
Correct. And we can make changes in the interim period before the next board meeting. The other option, because I know it is time sensitive, and I can have another draft to you all just for consideration. What I'll do is send it to you directly and ask that you don't discuss amongst yourselves, but that you could give me comments and feedback back individually. As your attorney, I can do that, and then I can provide it to the board for the board meeting next week if there's any changes that you'd like to have. But I would certainly recommend that it is approved by the entire body.
Okay. Any comments or questions about the policy? Any additions, changes? We always have a chance, and I don't think we review our policies, enough, as we found out last month, that we don't really go back and review them. And I think conceivably making them more available to incoming members, because we'll have a number of new members next year. I think, creating a process of onboarding new members, I think, should be a goal that we think about for next year. And not that we can, snap our fingers and immediately have something, but, I do think that is something that we've kind of lacked from a process standpoint looking back.
Certainly, and I'd also add that once the JPA process is sort of up and running, we'll want to incorporate these policies, maybe not as part of the bylaws, because I wouldn't want to have you all amend the entire bylaws anytime you want to make a policy change. But I think that there can be an adopted HR policy that also includes anything with respect to the JPA. So like I said, maybe the conflict of interest, financial disclosures, things might have to be amended to ensure that it aligns with the JPA. But I certainly agree that this is something that should be given to new members. We do have a stipulation in the agreement right now that says that to the best of the city's association ability, we will disclose this to new members or to persons who are considered members for purposes of that policy. And if you wanted to have people sign on to it, that's another thing that we could do. I mean, that would certainly affirm that they've received it, they've theoretically read it over and signed on to it. I don't think that's required, but I do think it is a great idea to ensure that everybody has access to it and that we're very open that this policy exists and that it does govern proceedings, whether it's a public meeting or text, emails, phone conversations that happen regarding cities association business.
Okay. Any questions, comments, changes, immediate changes? Or of course, Shantine can give us that draft, and if you have additional changes before the report is released on Tuesday, she can incorporate them.
Absolutely. Forward them either to Andy or you can forward them to me directly, and I'll confer with Andy and make sure she knows that they're coming in. But either way is great, and be happy to take that under consideration and include possible.
Okay. No comments? Do we need a motion to take this to the board, or just as this has been agendized now, is it fine?
Is that okay, Shantine?
Yeah, you don't need to have a motion to take it to the board. We'll just need a motion next week, as long as you're all okay with this going. But like I said, since there might be changes in the meantime anyway, no motion's necessary, just in case there are changes. Then we can have the new draft come forward next week.
Okay, thank you. Next up is
So the next is a planning collaborative contract. And so the board has already approved the scope of work, and which is a part of this contract, as well as the budget for this. And so I'm bringing the contract to you. The contract is the same, is mostly, there's been a few additions to the contract, and so that's why we wanted to bring it to you. We've added a conflict of interest clause. And Shantine, what was the other clause? Wasn't there 2 clauses we
Right, we have a conflict of interest clause, I believe that's number 13, and then 14 is a confidentiality clause. And that then restricts any information that is derived from the city's association being shared with any other parties. And of course, the conflict of interest clause therefore refers to if the consultant has any other parties to whom they could share that information, that they do not do so. And that they disclose to us whether they do have any such conflicts as soon as it's practicable, so we can either redress the issue and deal with it how we need to, or at least be advised of it. It also allows us, if we find out about a conflict of interest, to broach it with the consultant or and discuss the situation that arose and led to the conflict of interest, and then of course any resolutions that we can have going forward. And we thought that this would be helpful just to further safeguard the city's association, because my understanding is these consultants do work with a lot of different bodies, different entities, and there can be conflicts, and that doesn't mean that they can't do their job, but the idea is to ensure that cities associations' interests are protected to the utmost extent.
And just from an immediate, so there's an immediate concept. Is that within, so if there's a conflict of interest, it says, they need to inform the city's association immediately. Is that, within 24 hours from a contract standpoint, immediately is some, is it termed, within a certain period of time, or is that good enough from a contract standpoint?
Sorry. Go ahead, Andy.
We've also this has been kind of a big topic with us with the consultant already. And so immediate is pretty immediate. I would guess that it's, within a day, 2 days. We did have an issue that arose already with them working with one of their, they have a contract with ABAC. And so that is really the reason what drove us including this into the contract.
We can, if you want to be more definite with respect to the reporting time, put something in. I think that from a contract standpoint, the immediately does mean as soon as practicable. So that means as soon as they're aware of something that is a conflict, they are to notify us. If we then find out that they haven't done so, then that is our right to bring that as a potential breach of the entire contract. So it certainly behooves them to move quickly. As Andy mentioned, we've already had an issue. And so they're very much aware of why we are adding this and why it's being done so right now. And it is, of course, to protect the city's association and also to ensure that, they keep this contract. So they fought to come back. Andy and I had a lot of questions for them to make sure that this was going to be something that they could do and handle and, do so in an unbiased way. And so they're certainly apprised that we are taking this very, very seriously. But like I said, we can amend it to put something more definite. But I think as soon as it's practicable is the standard here, and I think they understand that.
Okay, thank you. Nisa?
Shantine or Andy, thanks for doing that. Do we define conflict of interest or have anything that further explains that an individual, so the planning collaborative consists of different individuals, and I think a lot of times it's the individual that poses the conflict and not the agency or the group itself. And so I would, if it's not there, I would suggest consideration of adding something that's more clear, that if you have someone working, for the city's association, then that individual cannot work in another situation that could even put us in a situation where there's an appearance, not even an actual, an appearance of conflict, because I think that's where we may run into more trouble as opposed to the collaborative versus the cities association. A lot of times, as Shanti knows, it's an individual level.
Right, and we do have language in there right now. I can certainly pump it up, Nisa, if you want to look at it, but we say contractor or its agents, any subcontractors or subconsultants are also bound by these terms. And then we also have the language in there is they must take all due diligent steps to prevent or permit the development of or existence of an actual conflict or conflict of interest. And so hopefully that does cover it pretty soundly, but again, happy to take your comments and make any changes.
Does that suffice for you, Nisa, or do you want to send us comments?
Nope, I'm going to defer to Shantine.
Okay.
Whatever the attorney thinks is enough, that's good.
Excellent.
As the attorney.
I know, I was going to say the other attorney. Yes. Thank you, Nisa.
Okay. Nothing else on this item?
And so do you,
Does this need to come to the board?
that's what I'm asking, how you would want us to handle this. Do you want us to put this on the consent agenda? Do you want us to speak to it?
Consent agenda is fine, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Consent.
Standard contract. Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Next. Boy, we're just going through everything today.
Election committee.
So the selection committee, I just wanted to make sure that we had a discussion because there seems to be a lot of questions about if we really should have the selection committee meeting this month or if we should wait until January. And the reason that I had agendized it was I thought that that's what our action was because of the policy. Because as of December, some of the seats will be vacant, and ABAG, and I didn't believe that you wanted ABAG or MTC to be vacant. And also, I just wanted to reiterate that in the motions, when we appoint people, we can establish when their term begins. There are some requests that you have that will be in the packet for the city selection committee. One request we have received is that Rod Sink's term will end December 6th, maybe, when they swear in their new council. Rod is currently the chair of BACMed, and he does not complete his Rod doesn't complete his term as chair of BACMed until January sometime. So he has written a letter asking if he may remain in the appointment until February 1. And so he's asking us to appoint one of the positions beginning February 1. Liz Niss serves Palo Alto City Council until January. And so whoever replaces Liz would not start until she is no longer a council member. So we do have, when we appoint, we can appoint them based on when a person is done. The BACMed also in the state statute, it allows for someone to stay on for 60 to 90 days. So that I leave that up to you of whether you would like to do that. And also it's whatever the will is of this body to have the meeting in November or to delay and have it in January or to have a meeting at another time.
So in going through this, and thank you for the spreadsheet, I think we need to keep this up to date and kind of check in more often. I was actually a little surprised about one of them. Hang on, let me see if I can find. Is SourceWise filled right now?
Yeah, it is. It is filled. I haven't been able to get a hold of anyone there. Sourcewise is that funny position where it's someone from Morgan Hill. It has to be a senior.
Right. It just-
So
It's just listing as expiring in June of 20.
yeah, no, and I've tried to get a hold of them and Sourcewise, they also have it's not, you don't have to be an elected official for that position.
Oh, okay.
So,
Right. But it was just whether or not it's been open since. the
yeah,
last-
no, and I've been trying to, it's hard to reappoint that when you can't have communication with the agency.
Okay. So, from my standpoint, I have no problem with a month or two delay here or there. It's just, I look at the number of open positions that we conceivably need to be filling. And that to me is a big effort, whether or not that's done in one meeting, 2 meetings. It's like, I think we often have, the city selection, the selection committee meetings often go, or maybe 3 or 4 are the most we appoint in any given hour. And we're talking about multiples here. So, from my standpoint, it's we do need to undertake this, but if we want to delay, whether or not we can push this as quickly as next week and putting in some of these, conceivably, if we don't, we in some of these councils will be changing, some of these positions will be changing. I'd say the majority of the people that were in yellow in the spreadsheet that were up for re-election, I think all of them are leading except for Nancy right now. So I think there's only one yellow position that would actually be dealt with that's kind of up in the air from an election standpoint. But of course, the ones that are term limited already, we do need to fill them relatively soon.
And just to give you an idea, we have received letters for ABAG, BACMed, and MTC only.
Mhm.
Right. And then of course, there's the concept of would a new, for some of the, what I'll say is alternate positions, whether or not a new cities association member or a new council member, that this is their main issue that they would love to take, apply for one of these positions becomes a question. So, some have issues filling them. So I do think that it'll have to be over 1 or 2 meetings before and conceivably we have something that's open to some degree. But, from an ABAG standpoint, we at least have one primary. So, it's how many, it's what positions, and I didn't kind of go through it from that standpoint. From a spreadsheet standpoint, what would be our issue of not having somebody there in January? I think that's what it comes down to. As far as what positions do we really have immediate need for?
What are immediate? You will have immediate for MTC, ABAG, based on your policy.
Yeah.
And BACMed. I mean, really anything that's in the green.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. It's how quickly they meet and how quickly they meet after, let's say, a January selection committee meeting. Nisa?
So I think go ahead.
Nisa?
You're finished. You want to finish, Andy?
I was just going to say that I do believe that ABAG and MTC will have meetings and BACMed as well.
Okay.
So based on what I've been hearing, Larry and board, it's like 3 different buckets. One is, and I think the effective date that Rudd Sinks is suggesting may solve that problem, which is there are some individuals who will no longer be elected officials based on our policy, but their terms on these different regional boards go beyond when they're elected officials. And so could they complete those terms And then whoever we select, whether it's November, December, January, it would be effective on whatever date they step down. So I think Rod Sink's idea of just in the motion, if we're to appoint someone to give it an effective date would solve that problem. The other thing, and Larry, you just mentioned it, is we expect a lot of new council members who may be interested in serving on regional boards, at least as alternates, and they won't be sworn in until December, January, depending on the city, and so they would not have a real opportunity to put their names in.
Yeah.
And then you want me to do the third one first, Andy, then you can chime in? Okay, and then the third thing is, our current policy says, you need to be an elected official to serve or represent us on these regional boards. But apparently some of the regional boards don't have that policy necessarily. And so the question is, could we have someone who is not an elected official continue to serve on those regional boards if the regional board doesn't have that requirement? So those are the three things I've heard, discussed as it relates to this selection committee. So I just wanted to put it out there.
Right. And I think from a wider standpoint, it's the policies along all these of our city, of the different organizations. And I don't think we capture that anywhere, and I think that's an important thing when we're talking about, a spreadsheet of, okay, here's the requirements and here's the requirements of that organization. Much like we talked about, the appointments for some of these organizations don't make sense because we appoint at one time of the year and they're appointing mid-year, much like we talked about in our last meeting. Next up is Margaret.
So question, I actually got an email from someone who is going to be elected onto a city council interested in one of the regional appointments. Are they they're eligible to run for it? Okay, great.
So I'll just make a comment. I'll just so just so that you know, this list, the agenda went to your city managers, assistant city managers. I gave the city managers an update, but then I lost my internet connection. So I followed up with an email. I did tell them that we do have an applicant that hasn't been sworn in yet from a city council for BACMed. They are eligible. I fielded calls from newly elected people today and have told them that they are eligible. So the staffs of the city should be forwarding it to the new electeds. There is a deadline, which is an artificial deadline for Auden and myself to try to create packets. Of course, we will take letters of interest and people can be nominated from the floor. So if your will is, I do think that from a standpoint of so many things needing to be reelected or reappointed, I think that something needs to happen this month, but that is up to you of what we do or when. But so know that some of your new council members have already communicated with me.
Okay, great. And then for Rod Sink's situation, I think his is a unique one because he's chair, and I think at our district we'll meet probably the third Wednesday of January. So he probably just wants to be able to do the changeover, and I don't know if we can just say, that would be his last meeting and have the new person. I mean, even at the meeting, I guess technically you can have him do the changeover and then switch members, but just to give him that last meeting, I think that that I would be fine with that. It's a very unique situation, and he deserves it.
Absolutely. Next up is Chappie.
Yeah, so what I was going to bring up the point that Lisa already brought up, and that is that it's in our bylaws that someone can't serve on one of these boards or commissions if they're not elected. So, and I love Rod, and I would love to see him continue on, but I'm just concerned about setting the precedent if we're going to make it an exception to the bylaws, because this is going to come up again, and if we deny in the future, if we deny someone the ability or the opportunity to continue to serve, it's going to create some issues. Andy, on the, we're really talking about actually is what, 3 different entities, right? BACMed, MTC, and ABAG. Don't we typically don't we have challenges even getting people to want to sign up or serve on some of these other?
We have, it is challenging for the other positions, RWR, the recycling and the OAC, which we have positions available. Those sometimes are challenging to fill. ABAG, MTC, and BACMed, we usually have lots of interest.
Right, those are the 3 that I always
Mhm.
see there. There's a lot of discussion, a lot of interest. So we should really move forward with at least with the ones that, we don't get a lot of interest, to try to, get those filled and out of the way. As far as the big 3, we're talking about how many meetings that could potentially, if we don't have it filled by early January, how many potential meetings are we talking about being missed?
Well, they don't have their meetings. Not all their meetings are online right now listed. So
Okay.
I went to MTC and tried to look, and also ABAG.
I would actually also, sorry if I can interject because I'm on Air District. They start creating the committees or, taking interest in the committees and try to have that set by the first meeting in January. So that would be the other piece I would think is if we want our reps to be on the subcommittees or committees of these organizations, that we get them in there sooner than later.
So also in December, there's a joint MTC and ABAG legislative committee. I see that, but I don't see it. The calendar doesn't move over into January.
The other question I had too is, you said that Rod's term ends when the new council members sworn in, like December 4th? Because typically terms end at the end of the year, December 31st. So that's
the general law cities, most of them swear their new councils in December, and the cities that are charter cities do it at the beginning of the year. So it's actually really kind of challenging to try to keep track of all the because everything's changing between December and January, and Palo Alto is a little later than everyone else. So Cupertino, yeah. So the smaller cities that are general law happen in December.
Okay, so just so I understand what our decision is, one is to move forward with having our meeting on the 12th, or push it out until January. I guess that's one decision point. And the other one is how do we fill the gap in terms of council members who were termed out, and when the next meeting is for particularly the big 3 is what we're really talking about. So are those, am I missing something in terms of what direction we need to give?
I think that's the main direction.
Yep.
It's just we have a lot of items here. So it's dealing with the big 3 and whether or not we deal with them now, or let's say whether or not we deal with them in November or January, and then it's the rest of them, which
and I also just want to mention that somebody had called me and questioned that we were doing this early, like appointing somebody now and that they may not take position. This is kind of what we've been doing for the last 2 years. If we know that there's an opening, actually BACMed asked us to appoint before somebody terms out, so that there isn't a gap. And so we have tried to do that with these big appointments, to appoint it before it terms out. So we aren't doing this isn't anything different that I agendized, but the timing of the year is, makes it maybe a little difficult.
Margaret, you talked about subcommittees being set up for Backman before January? Or are they basically discussing them in December and then deciding them in January, or discussing them in January?
So they take interest like around now, and then they have the list set up we have a retreat in January, so that's where it's presented. It's like usually like the third week of January, and new members can join a committee, but what I found, like the first year, because I came in March, most of the committees were taken, so I didn't have much choice. So that's that would be the concern, or that we do get someone in early so they have more options to be involved.
Got it. So it's,
So just to wrap this up, so the way I see this, the cleanest solution to me would be to have the meeting on the 12th, with the exception to decide on all the positions besides, except for the big three, which would be moved out until January, and then extend the term of for the council members who are termed out. That would be the cleanest, in my mind, the cleanest solution. The only problem with that, again, is that it sets a precedent in terms of our bylaws stating that if someone's not currently serving in office, and they can't fill those positions.
So, and it also negates a policy that we just readopted.
reaffirmed, yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Right.
That is the problem, yeah.
That's my concern. I think it's more the policy too than.
Can we
than
do
the
like an
bylaws.
individual? I'm sorry, I didn't raise my, but so we have Rod's situation. And there may be other situations. Because I do think, I really think, and going back to Chape's point, where we can't, how do we justify allowing one individual who is no longer an elected official to continue to represent us on a regional board and not allow someone else to do it? So and it's not written in our policy where we make that kind of distinction. Like if you're chair of the regional board, then we're going to make an exception for you. And we all know this is not a hypothetical, but so we really need to figure out how we're going to address. And I think the cleanest way to do it, honestly, is we love Rod. We love a lot of the other electeds as well. It's really to say all or nothing. And if we want to be consistent, and Shantine can keep us honest, is comply with our policy unless we decide to change our policy, is to do it November 12th. So only elected officials are serving on these boards. And I'm happy to hear that even if they're not sworn in yet, like the incoming council members are eligible. That helps one of the issues I'd heard. So that's good that even if they're not completely sworn in, they're still considered an elected official.
And one issue that I had with, the only issue, as much as I love Rod, of not doing anything, is exactly what Margaret said, was if we don't appoint somebody, then they don't even have the idea that, oh, I should be shooting for this subcommittee or that subcommittee as far as Backman is concerned. Margaret, do you want to go ahead and comment?
Oh, thanks. Sorry. Yeah, I'm just thinking if it's just the Rod situation, maybe we can work something out with the air district. And, if I mean, it's really a ceremonial thing, that meeting, the changeover. And if he just does it, at the beginning of the meeting and then steps off and then the new member comes on or something like that, I would think we can work something out. So I think we should just stick with our policy and move forward and figure out Rod on his own individual case.
Okay.
And since this is recorded, I want to reiterate, I love Rod, but I think we should be consistent.
Yeah, and I think the bigger issue is the subcommittee issue, that it's like before the January meeting, we need to have put somebody in there and given them time to give feedback to what subcommittees and trying to make their first year that much more successful at the end of the day. So that's my take also.
All right then.
So
Okay, so everything is going on the agenda.
well,
Right. I mean, we'll probably only get to BACMed, MTC, and ABAG,
Yes.
right? We don't have any letters of interest from anything else yet.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. I think then that
But
makes to push off.
yes,
And
Mariko?
go ahead.
putting those that don't generate as much interest in January might actually be a good way to get new council members involved, right?
Right.
They may be so excited.
Yes.
Yeah, let's put you on recycling. Go.
But I think Andy, for all these positions, and I know it's an ask for you and Aiden over the next week, but it's trying to get a better, let's say, summary. It's trying to make it's exactly what Mariko just said. It's trying to sell that position and what they do, because I remember when I joined, I'm like, well, it wasn't until after that I'm like, oh, I really should have put my name in for this or that, because you're relatively new, you're learning cities association, and what's the ins and outs of this regional organization, and whether or not that's an alternate, whether or not you want to throw your name as an alternate or one of the main characters because nobody else wants to do it. It's summarizing what the position is, conceivably a link to their website. So as far from a standard standpoint, and then what the different responsibilities are. So you have that for. You're muted, Andy, if you're speaking.
Sorry about that. Here, I'm just going to go to the beginning of the, so this is the agenda.
Yeah.
And then when you get to the appointments, the website for ABAG is here, the bylaws for ABAG, the job description, and the roster. There's a job description for ABAG.
Okay.
So we've tried to do that for everything, and that's you can see they're all right here. Auden did a really nice job with this agenda, making sure that people could find the information.
Okay, good. That helps.
Okay. If there's anything else that you think would be helpful, just let us know.
Okay. I think the number of meetings a month helps.
So in the job descriptions sheet, terms of appointment, attendance, reporting requirements. When we know it, we do include it.
Andy, I think it was there.
Okay.
It said like Mondays or I couldn't read it as quick, but.
On their website, like for the BACMed, it says when they're meeting. If you click on the website link.
Yeah, it's just how many different clicks you need to do. If you had just a quick summary page.
Well, it's in the attachments under next to that organization.
Yeah.
So, like for example, BACMed is 3B, and then if it's under attachments, is you click on the blue, it's the web link, and it takes you right to the website, which gives you all that information.
And then the bylaws, and then the job description, which has the meetings, etc.
Okay. Nisa?
I know we recently reaffirmed our current policy, but I'm just going to put it out there for next year, not for this appointment period, but whether or not we want to revisit this hard and fast rule of only elected officials can serve in this capacity if the regional board's own bylaws don't prohibit non-elected officials to serve. Because I do think there is value with having someone with experience continue to serve in some of these roles. And so for next year, it's most of us will be on the board again, all of us. I wouldn't mind revisiting it to see if maybe we can tweak, because, and Shantine can echo this as well. You want some flexibility in your policies sometimes. And I feel like it's so hard if it's like, got to be an elected official, and sometimes it doesn't really work. So maybe that's something we can consider next year.
Right, and just to kind of tag along on that, Nisa, certainly when the JPA gets up and running, I think that's very much going to be one of the policies to discuss. So there will be an opportunity at least as early as then, if not earlier.
Right, and I think, yeah, and definitely, Andy and I have talked a little bit about, but basically, yes, when we reevaluate the JPA, that's critical to look at how we do appointments, and then also when we do appointments and how that aligns with those organizations, because I think that's a big thing also, that if we have, and not that we see right now we have a lot of people that are finishing up terms, but it's part of the year, part of the way through a specific term, and it's trying to figure out whether or not it makes more sense to shorten some of those terms to line up with either council terms, or even conceivably how that organization operates normally. So definitely taking a look at that more holistically across the board when we set up our JPA.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have any say in that. It's the jurisdiction that tells us how to do that. So,
right, but we can figure out how our appointment, when we're
right,
appointing, we could say, yes, we'll give you a 2-year term because of whatever. It's like it just to set that expectation up early or something of that nature. I don't know. Okay. So, Andy, I think you have direction.
okay. We're just moving forward.
Yep.
Correct? Okay. All right. And then the next, I had the election results on there in case we needed to discuss anything regarding any positions. And I'm happy to say we don't need to talk about the election. Committee updates. I don't know if Chappie, Rich, and Nisa have anything they want to share regarding racial justice. I just put it on. I do have a little bit of an update for you on that because I did talk to the Chiefs Association, and actually I talked to Chief No, and Chief No is very happy and willing to work with us. And so I'll pass that information back on to Rania so that we can do next steps for your committee. But I don't know if there's anything else you guys had, anything that you wanted
I'll
to
just
share.
a real quick brief update, and also give context to your update that you just gave. So the three of us met actually 3 times, even though one of our meetings, Rich and Nisa failed to keep me on topic and on point. So I don't think I can count 3 meetings. So we had 2 productive meetings, and looking at the dynamics of the different cities. Obviously, San Jose is different from Morgan Hill, which is different from Los Altos. So we recognize the challenges in terms of having one specific strategy that meets the needs and the vision of the different cities. So what we decided to do was first of all, we identified 2 priorities. One was below market rate housing, and as well as public safety accountability. What we want to do moving forward is compile all the policies and practices for each jurisdiction in one document so that we can have a holistic view of what every city is doing, and then move forward with designing a strategy and policies that all of the cities can get behind, which obviously, again, each city has different needs and requirements. So we have to work through that process. And then the other step is to identify a path forward in terms of public safety. And so the idea came up in terms of collaborating with the Santa Clara County Police Chiefs Association and working with Chief No to come up with some policy strategies. And that's just a real quick overview. And I also have actually a write-up that Rania did, which actually goes into a lot more detail. So I will send that out to the team to fill in some of the gaps. And I don't know if my committee members want to add on any additional detail, but that's my report.
I would just like to add that we appreciate Chappie allowing his staff to help with that, and having Rania working on that was a big help.
Good. I'd like to see that. Marika?
I will send that out.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask if you could send that out. I'd like to see it too. Which Chief No is with which city?
Sunnyvale.
Sunnyvale. Okay.
So it's kind of interesting. It's like, okay, this year he was head of the Chiefs Association. Kent is in charge of the City Managers Association, and I'm in charge of the cities association. So it's kind of interesting, like for whatever reason, the dice rolled across the board this year. Yeah.
Triad. Okay, thanks.
And to a large degree, and I've been very impressed with Chief No and how he's worked and how he's helped us to a large degree work forward on unity and outreach within the community. So it's actually been we hear some cities say, oh, we're going to do things. We've had 5 unity events. We've actually had a lot of discussion and released a lot of transparency information and did a lot of reform over the last 5 months. So I've been very proud to have him as our chief. So anyway, anything else on other subcommittees? Chappie, I wish we had actually gotten to the wage subcommittee this year. I've actually heard back from certain community members about issues with the CPI increase, but and if we had done more of a regional effort, which maybe we can do next year, as far as looking at CPI increases over minimum wage, I think it would have actually been useful, but ran out of time.
Add to the work plan for next year.
Yes, Nisa?
Just one other thing I'm going to suggest adding to our agenda is the RENA methodology update and also the public comment period, and whether or not as a cities association we want to send a letter giving our feedback on the methodology and the numbers. And I think we can actually discuss a letter that everybody can agree to, because the numbers are big. We don't know how we're going to build the units. Like, I think there's some things everybody could agree to, because it's an objection letter. As opposed to a support letter for anything. But I would love to have, 5-10 minutes to discuss that at the meeting if possible.
Okay, we kind of moved on to board of directors meeting agenda. So go ahead and add that. City selection committee. So Andy, do you want to kind of go through these items?
Yeah, so the city selection committee hopefully will be 6 to 7. Or 6:55. The consent would have the minutes, the financial, and the planning collaborative contract.
Mhm.
I believe that we were going to hold off and ask Ahmad Thomas and the Silicon Valley Leadership Group and the recovery effort since this agenda is looking a little full, because I think you wanted to give him more time.
Yes, and I think that would make sense for a January meeting, I'm guessing also. But
okay, is that acceptable to everyone? Yes.
I think so.
Chappie, you're frozen.
Oh.
Okay.
He's nodding.
Rich. Okay. All right. We also had a request, which is in your packet. It was it's a BCDC request. It was funny. It came via the county, and so I'm not sure that you'll want to do that at this meeting. Canyon snow request is eliminated. Should we go through everything and then to go back and decide whether you want to do this BCDC request? Sure. Okay. Yep. Rod has been asking to give a final BACMed update.
Makes sense.
Okay, so 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 10 minutes?
10? Maybe?
Okay, what was that? I heard 20 and 10.
So
I said 10.
So I don't know what issues he might have, or what summary or kind of forward direction. Anything?
I don't know. Margaret might have an idea what he might talk about.
Yeah, I think there's a number of issues. There's been a lot of work in the EV area, electric vehicles. There's a smell issue at in Milpitas. And then we've been doing a lot of work on like care communities and health reports around refineries. So I would just give him 10 minutes, knowing it probably will go to 15.
Okay,
Okay, set aside 15 and we'll tell them.
okay.
How about giving him
Right.
5 and knowing it'll go to 10?
And then how about 10 minutes so we can just discuss real quickly the general membership meeting? We need to have approval on the honorees.
Yep.
Okay. And then the HR policies. Do you want to have a discussion on that?
We need to approve it if nothing else. We could just make it consent, but I think it's important that you know, we were looking, you know, in part of kind of looking at our organizational status, as well as, we won't say anything specific, but going back and looking at, okay, we need to put this policy in place, especially now that we have two kind of personnel within our organization that are being paid.
Okay, 10,
Just to keep
15
it all there.
minutes. Okay, the audit, do you want to have an audit report? Probably.
Yes.
Or do you want to put it in the, consent? Probably need to discuss it a little.
The biggest question is, of course, it's like a lot of this is tied to the airplane noise roundtable, and that's not really handled until January. So we can talk about, so from that standpoint, you know, it's more of a consent item, I think. Do people feel we really need to discuss that or no?
We don't need to discuss it. I think consent is the right way to go.
Okay. Okay, RENA methodology, you know that's not going to take 5 or 10 minutes, Nisa.
But it needs to be discussed.
I
I mean,
so
I
what,
can
20?
keep my presentation to 5 minutes. I can.
But then everybody has to comment. So
Right.
I'm just being, you know, what do you guys think?
Like half an hour is when it comes down to it. Whenever we talk about RENA, it seems like. And it's going to be the last chance for a lot of these people to actually talk about this issue, at least for this year, which is pretty important.
Okay, so it's a lot on consent. 10. That's actually, do you want to allow the BCDC folks to come? I imagine you could all find plenty enough to talk about just with this without any presentations. Besides Rod's.
I forget, did they actually say how long that they needed? I remember they're asked,
yeah,
but I
I
don't
have to-
remember saying.
I have to look at the requests again.
Establish a regional agreement for necessary actions for the environmental rising sea levels. I think this is actually meaningful. And, you know, I don't know if we push it off until next year. I think conceivably, if they could do it in, what are you at as far as time is concerned?
So we usually do allow somebody to present for 10 and then you leave 10 minutes for questions. So
Yep.
20, I think we can make that work.
Okay. I think it's a reasonable thing as long as they can stay within their time.
All right.
And
does that-
especially, right, and especially they have an ask because which they were asking in November, December, they're actually trying to do outreach. So we're helping them. So I do think that has value.
Does that sound okay with everyone? We got a little bit of cushion left in time, and then have time for Kent to talk, for me to give any update if needed. And if we ended early, that wouldn't be so bad.
No,
Yeah. I don't know if you want to talk about elections, or do we want a placeholder for elections or COVID in our next meeting? I'll just throw that out there.
We can always
Yeah.
add it and then not.
Yeah, that's why. Right. It's easier to add and then, you know, get it on the agenda in case, because COVID has been up and down depending upon what's happening at any given time. I don't think that there's going to be that much happening between now and next Thursday, but definitely elections will be an ongoing issue because conceivably, will we have riots? Will we have, who knows where we'll be a week from now? Is always the question. So it's probably better to put those two items on there. And then basically we're either still at orange tier and nothing has changed and there hasn't been a surge and the elections are going smoothly and we don't have people marching in the streets because of whatever's happening. Okay.
Okay. Got it.
Anything? Okay. Good. Let's see. Public comment, and we have no members of the public, except for, no, Kent is hidden away. Okay. So with that, thanks everyone. We will go ahead and adjourn the meeting 4 minutes late, I'm sorry. But I think we talked through a lot of the big issues, and thanks for everyone for being here. It's difficult times. It's been a stressful week, as if we didn't have a stressful 6 months or 9 months, but it's been a very stressful week for a lot of people. So thanks for being here. Have a good evening.
Congratulations to everyone.
Thank you. Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Take care, everyone.
So long.
Thank
And
Bye.
hi.
Bye.
Okay.
And
That was, that was a good meeting. Did you stop don't forget to stop the.
I stopped the recording this time. I forgot to stop it one day and Rich and I are still yakking away.
Live in the corner though. Or did you
Oh,
stop
it's still,
recording?
wait,